KB Video News. KB Video News, y'all.
All right, folks, we're going to get busy right away because I got a lot of stories here that I need to dig into. And this particular article I'm going to be talking about in the middle of a deadly pandemic. What's been going on here in the United States is it's been a lot of cop killings, here in the United States, and it's like March, and so far as of March 26, 2020, there have been 400 people killed by the police, by the cops in the United States. That 400 as of May 26, 2020, and you know, and also goes hand in hand with what the story I'm getting ready to talk about here is. You know, it's really bad, and it's really unfortunate that these things are happening. And you can go with the case where you had Breonna Taylor, who was shot in her home by cops, and that was in Nashville. That was in Tennessee, and so of course, you had the Arbery case that happened in down in Georgia, but that wasn't cop related. However, it was an ex-cop that did it. And then you had George Floyd that died on Monday, who ended up getting suffocated at the hands of a cop who had his knee on his neck for over 7 minutes. And you know, so I'm going to start with this one story, and this is another story that kind of got overglossed. And this story actually happened in May of on the 8th of May. So I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna tell you this one. Then I'm gonna lead up to what's going on in Minneapolis right now, because they have actually, you know, they got some riots going on in Minneapolis right now, and that really shocked me. I'm like, wow, the people in Minneapolis rioting? Okay, here we go. This is a man that was shot and killed by the Houston Police Department after stealing his taser. This is the story, and so this is the way it's going now. A North Freeway driver has died after he was shot to death by a Houston police officer during a traffic stop. It began when the officer pulled the 48-year-old driver over in a parking lot on Esplanade for driving more than 90 miles per hour around 1 a.m. The officer administered a field sobriety test and determined the man was possibly drunk. The officer then tried to arrest the man, and that's when the struggle broke out. HPD says during the altercation, the officer pulled out his taser and fired it, but at some point the suspect was able to get the taser in his hands. That's when the officer fired several rounds. Police, that suspect during the struggle was able to retrieve the officer's taser. Houston police executive stated the officer still giving verbal commands at some time during that struggle. Once the suspect had the taser, discharged his weapon several times. The suspect was transported to the hospital where he later died. The police said the officer's body cam and dash cam were recording during the incident. And I'm going to have to see if I can get any more information on that one. Like I said, that happened back on the 8th of May, and today is the 27th. So let me be clear on that. And it just goes along with the story, what I'm talking about. You know, you're talking about 400 people being killed in the United States by cops in the middle of a pandemic. So I guess it doesn't matter whether it's a pandemic or not. Here we go. On with the Minneapolis follow-up story here. The George Floyd Minneapolis follow-up said Minneapolis police and protesters clashed almost 24 hours after George Floyd's death in custody. And 4 Minneapolis officers were fired Tuesday after the detention and death of 46-year-old George Floyd. A scene unfolded in a Facebook video showing a white officer kneeling on Floyd's neck as he pleaded with police, "I can't breathe." Floyd died in Hennepin County Medical Center soon after the encounter, which started when police detained him Monday evening on suspicion of trying to pass a fake $20 bill at a convenience store. The FBI launched an investigation Tuesday at the Minneapolis Police Department, fired the officers as well as three other officers who were at the scene. The quick action didn't prevent a large protest Tuesday evening that included tense confrontation with police who responded with tear gas. Being black in America should not be a death sentence, said a visibly shaking Mayor Jacob Fry, who said the officer used an unauthorized move against Floyd. For 5 minutes, we watched a white officer press his knee into a black man's neck. 5 minutes. When you hear someone calling for help, you're supposed to help. This officer failed in the most basic humane sense. Police Chief Arredondo said he had stayed up all night wrestling with his decision to fire the officers. Arredondo said he couldn't say much about the case, either about the FBI's investigation or a parallel probe by the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, but added the sanctity of life has always been the pillar of his department. What occurred last night was certainly very tragic and very sad, he said in the afternoon news conference. Officials have not publicly named the 4 officers, but multiple sources identified the 2 prominently featured in the 10-minute Facebook Live video as Derek Chauvin, who was kneeling on Floyd's neck, and Tom Thao, or it might be Tao, who stood by as witnesses pleaded with the officers to let Floyd up and to check his pulse. Arredondo said at an earlier news conference that he had asked the FBI to take the case after watching the video of the encounter and receiving additional information about it from community members without elaborating. Community activist John Thompson says the images of Floyd and other black men across the country who have met unjust deaths at the hands of police trigger a kind of collective trauma within the black community. Let's be clear, this is murder, said Thompson, whose advocacy in the 2016 police killing of his friend Philando Castile capitulated him into a run for state office. I don't want to be labeled the angry black man. I should be able to have that emotion. I'm angry, wouldn't you be? Floyd's family has retained attorney Benjamin Crump, who also represents the families of Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor, a black man and a woman killed in recent high-profile cases. These people I just mentioned at the beginning of the story. This abusive, excessive, and inhumane use of force cost the life of a man who was being detained by the police for questioning about a nonviolent charge, read the statement from Crump's office. Chauvin is represented by Thomas Kelly, a Minneapolis attorney who was part of the legal team that successfully defended former St. Anthony police officer Geronimo Yanez in the 2016 shooting of Castillo. Kelly declined to comment through a spokesman Tuesday. The arrest that sparked the fatal chain of events happened about 8 p.m. Monday when police were called to investigate a report of someone trying to pay with the counterfeit bill at Cup Foods. According to police and scanner and posted online, and they claimed that they found the man matching the suspect's description in his car. Cup Foods owner Mike A. later confirmed that one of the employees had followed the store policy by calling police after someone thought to be Floyd tried to pay with the counterfeit $20 bill. Officers ordered Floyd out of the car and took him into custody, police spokesman John Elder said, adding that their body cameras were rolling the whole time. The arrest was also streamed by a bystander on Facebook Live, where the archived footage approached 1 million views as of Tuesday evening. The video captures Chauvin with his knee on the neck of Floyd, who was lying face down on the street next to the rear passenger wheel in pain, while repeatedly telling the police he couldn't breathe as 3 officers hold him down. Please, 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 I can't breathe. Please, man, Floyd is heard pleading with the officers. At one point, he cries out for his mother. Then, several other witnesses had gathered on the sidewalk outside of Cup Foods with several recording the scene on their phones. So you got, let him breathe at least. And one person, bystander, was heard telling the police. At one point, a group of bystanders continued to plead for the officer to check Floyd's pulse. An officer believed to be Tao can be heard saying, "Don't do drugs, guys." "So you call what he's doing okay?" one bystander asked, referring to Chauvin. As Floyd begins to lose consciousness, a group of bystanders becomes increasingly agitated. Among them was a woman who identified herself as an off-duty firefighter and first responder. "The fact that you guys aren't checking his pulse and doing compressions if he needs them, you guys are on another level," she said. Tao then is shown moving away from his colleagues to tell the crowd to get back on the sidewalk. As he moves toward them, one of the bystanders points out that Floyd is no longer seen to be moving. A short time later, paramedics arrived and put him onto the gurney into the waiting ambulance. Floyd was taken to HCMC, where he died at 9:25 p.m. The cause of his death is pending further testing and investigation by multiple agencies, according to the medical examiner. No weapons were recovered from the scene, police said. The footage doesn't capture what led to Floyd's arrest, only picking up after he has already been taken to the ground and is in handcuffs. Darnella Frazier, who filmed and posted the encounter, told the Star Tribune that she started recording as soon as I heard him trying to fight for his life in front of her and other bystanders near the intersection of 38th Street and Chicago Avenue. "It was like a natural instinct, honestly, to start recording," said Frazier, who lives in the neighborhood. "The world needed to see what I was seeing. Stuff like this happens in silence too many times." Later on Tuesday, Friday, and council members Andrea Jenkins, who represented the ward where Floyd lived, joined editors of traditional black publications North News and Insight News for an emotional 45-minute Facebook Live session. The conversation later turned to the MPD's initial news release that said Floyd died after a medical incident, which sparked widespread criticism on social media that the department appeared to be downplaying his death. Jenkins pointed out that the MPD has its own communications department and issues statements without vetting at City Hall. The statement that was put out was almost as harmful, the perpetuation of the act, Jenkins said. "We all watched that video. There were no medical concerns prior to the officer putting his knee on Floyd." Elder, the police spokesman, at first said that Floyd had gotten out of the car on his own, but physically resisted officers and was handcuffed before officers noted that he was in medical distress. Elder later walked back some of those statements, saying they were based on preliminary information. The technique used, he added, was not a department-authorized chokehold. Body camera footage has been turned over to the BCA, which said in a news release that its investigation was separate from the FBI civil rights investigation, and that it would turn over its findings to the county attorney's office for possible criminal charges. Racially charged death also threatened to reignite tensions between police and minority communities that reached a boiling point in 2015 after the fatal shooting of Jamar Clark and a week-long protest outside of a nearby police station that followed. Nakima Armstrong, a prominent local voice on police reform, who was a fixture at those protests, said that for all the gains that people of color have made, deaths like Floyd's are another reminder that the system remains stacked against them. "It just reminds me of Eric Garner once again, a black man accosted by police and pleading for his life, saying he couldn't breathe," she said, referring to an unarmed New York man who died in 2014 after being placed in a police chokehold. "I'm fully convinced that if police wouldn't have been called to the scene, that he would still be alive." And that's wow, that's a real deep follow-up, and I'm going to put the link, as I always do, as I'm trying to do now. I'm going to put the link so you can actually see this story yourself. And it's just another sad day, man, what we have to deal with, another death. I mean, it's bad enough that we got to deal with over 100,000 people dead with the coronavirus. You got to deal with that. Now you got to deal with this, something that's that could be an alleged initiation by cops that's going on nationwide, you know, and it just smells real fishy. It smells real fishy here. I'm just, you know, it's like, I don't know, you know, clan members with badges is a real thing. It's a real thing, and it's been around for a long time. It didn't just start. It's been around. Don't forget all the Klan cops that you had that were attacking black people during the civil rights era, sicking dogs on people. Though a lot of those cops were Klan members, and it's a lot of Klan members out there right today that are cops, that have the job, that are police officers. So you got to be real careful out there when you're out there, and do what you got to do to protect your family and protect yourself. It's sad. It's real sad, man. I mean, I can't stress it enough, man, that these situations are real. They're happening right now as we speak. I can't, you know, it's like a playwright in Hollywood couldn't write a script like this.
It's KPVIDEONEWS, y'all.